Now let's get to our first topic of discuss this Monday. The World Bank, for the opt-in time, has warned that the high cost of fuel subsidy going by the spike in oil prices may deteriorate Nigeria's fiscal balance, maintaining that shielding the Nigerian consumers from the high cost of fuel will pile up more debt for the country. According to the international lender, increasing fuel subsidy puts the Nigerian economy at a high risk, as subsidy payments could significantly impact public finance and pose debt sustainability concerns, despite increasing oil prices occasioned by the Russia and Ukraine crisis. Recall that the global lender, in its report on expensive fuel subsidy regime published last year in November, advised that the removal of subsidy must be accompanied by aggressive reform efforts that could contribute to the growth and, of course, sustained growth than a sustained period of the high prices. Well, this is a very important, and to give more insight into this development, I have joining me live via Zoom is the fiscal policy and Africa tax leader at Price Waterhouse Coopers, Mr. Taiwo Oyedele. Thank you so much, Mr. Oyedele. Thank you for your time on the show.
Thank you, Tolu. Thank you for having me.
Yes, again and again, the World Bank has come up with this same comment talking about subsidy, high subsidies, and what it means for Nigeria. On the other hand, our government, whether being economical or being political, whichever way, doesn't want to take out subsidy. 4 trillion naira has just been approved for this. Where do you come in all of these issues? What do you make of this, and what's the impact on Nigeria's economy?
Yeah, I think it's understandable why the World Bank keeps hammering on this issue of subsidy, because it's a problem that is not going away. So it's difficult to move away from a problem that has refused to go away. While it's difficult to make the right decision, because the right decision is simply to remove the subsidy. But we know that for political economy consideration, government is unable to do that. But if you take a step back and you actually ask yourself, should we be spending 4 trillion naira on subsidy? The answer is clearly no, we shouldn't. Should we remove subsidy? The answer is yes. Is it going to be easy to remove it? The answer is no. Can we find somewhere in the middle as a stopgap measure, which is what we can do between now and when we are in a position to remove the subsidy? What I think is that today, significant amount of this subsidy is not going to the right people. So the people you want to subsidize in any economy are the poor and the vulnerable, household, and maybe even in the case of businesses, micro and small businesses, and the people you want to subsidize. But unfortunately, we have designed these subsidies such that everybody benefits, whether you're poor, whether you're rich, whether you have 20 cars in your house, you benefit from the subsidy. It's even worse than that, because we also have a very significant component of this subsidy that's actually not going to Nigerians, so to say, because they represent products that are smuggled out of the country. We are not even entirely confident that every subsidy we're paying represents a legitimate import of refined products. And even at that, the trigger point for the payment of subsidy is the point where you bring the product into Nigeria. Whether you go and dump it in the lagoon, whether you take it out and take it to Benin Republic, you still get the subsidy. And the question is, why can't government find something in the middle that is designed to target the beneficiaries that need to benefit from this subsidy, and the subsidy point should be at the pump, not at the import point? For example, you can easily identify those who are eligible for this, subsidy. And in my view, I'll say it's only mostly it will be transporters of shared vehicle, passenger vehicles that should be eligible. like in Lagos, the Danfo drivers, the buses. A lot of those buses, anyway, the big ones are running on diesel. The trucks that are used to transport product from the farm to the market mostly are on diesel. Many industries run their generators on diesel. So, by the way, a lot of Molwes, the big buses in Lagos are on diesel. They are not enjoying any subsidy. The poorest people in Lagos use Molwe. They are not enjoying subsidy at all. So, once you identify those who are eligible and need to be subsidized, which is shared passenger transportation running on petrol, you should then just give them fuel cards. Fuel cards are all over the place. And for those who don't have, are not able to use card for whatever reason, you do a mobile payment. They get it on their mobile phone. It doesn't have to be a smartphone. We have M-Pesa in Kenya that is working well. So you walk into the first station, you buy the fuel, and then you give them the card, and they take the subsidy from it, so that the rest of us who don't need to be subsidized can pay the market price. Now, what this will do for us is that if you allow the market price to prevail, it will attract investment into the sector. You can create economic prosperity, create jobs, and more importantly, you can preserve foreign exchange. One of the concerns that Nigerians have, including the Labour Congress, is that when you remove subsidy, there will be increase in inflation. On one hand, we can look back into history and see the times we have removed subsidy, not removed subsidy, we have increased the price of petrol, and say what was the impact in terms of inflation. Babangida, for example, in 1992, 1993, increased the price of, the pump price of petrol all the way from 70 kobo to 3 naira 25 kobo. And then, in fact, in the subsequent year, from 3 naira 25 kobo to 11 naira, right? And then Abdul Salam increased from 11 naira to 20 naira in 1999. And in 2012, by the Jonathan administration, it was increased from 65 to 120. Now, these are increases that are close to or more than 100%. We have the data to support what the inflation impact will be. In addition to that, because of a pressure that importation of refined petroleum product is putting on our foreign reserve, a lot of the depreciation in the value of naira today can be attributed to the importation of refined products. In other words, if we get to a point where we take out the fictitious consumption and the smuggling, and we need less FX to import refined products or swap of our crude production, then the value of naira can actually appreciate such that imported inflation will go down, and overall, there will be almost no impact in terms of inflation.
Great one there. I must thank you so much for that explanation and answer to that question. But before I go into the Forex angle of it, because there's also a comment regarding that, I'm bothered that some Nigerians, or some arguments on the other side, is what has happened to the price of diesel, the price of aviation fuel. They are saying that kerosene is also on one side. That if this happens, are you sure that this is not the same thing that would happen with regards to PMS? That's just the question. Maybe that's the fear.
Yes, the fear is valid and it's legitimate. Of course, if you deregulate the price of petrol, the price will go up. There was a time in 2020 where the market price was lower than the pump price, the regulated price. And in fact, government reduced the price at some point. So if you allow the market forces to determine the price, it will go up and down depending on the movement in the international market. That's a given. The price of diesel has gone up recently very significantly for a combination of impacts. One is the rising price of crude oil in the international market. The second one is the scarcity of diesel because of the crisis, in Ukraine. You have aviation fuel also impacted. But overall, we got the result of inflation for last month, just a few days ago, and the increase in inflation is marginal, right? Even with the significant increase in the cost of diesel. If we allow the economy to work and market forces to play out, what's going to happen is Nigerians can be so prosperous that they're able to afford everything that they need for their survival. When Nigerians, have the opportunity to relocate to developed countries and they are celebrating it, they're not celebrating the fact that they have to now start paying more than $1 per liter of petrol. They're not celebrating the fact that they now have to pay 40% in personal income tax rate. They are celebrating the fact that they think that they will be more prosperous, such that whatever the amount is that they need to pay for petrol, that they need to pay for rent, that they need to pay for diesel, that they need to pay for taxes, they'll be able to afford it and have something left. So our conversation needs to start shifting from artificially keeping prices low, even though it means that it may not be available. That's the same thing we have with electricity, to a philosophy of let's make the system work so that people can find employment, so there can be production, so that we can have better output, better value, and therefore people are in a position to afford what they need, including if they like to, drive cars and buy petrol and whatever it is. If you put this in context, we're talking about 4 trillion here in a country where we are struggling to balance the budget. We are borrowing heavily. In fact, we were told that about $1.25 billion Eurobond was issued just to pay subsidy. This is something you would expect to see in movies. It's almost unbelievable that we are borrowing in dollars to come and pay subsidy. This is literally setting money on fire, because that's not something that can pay itself back. 4 trillion naira, I've seen some analysis suggesting that it's more than the corporate income tax and VAT. I'll put it differently, actually. I'll say that 4 trillion is more than all the taxes collected in Nigeria by local government, by state government, 36 of them, by federal government, except VAT, company income tax, and petroleum profit tax. All other taxes, including personal income tax, including levies, including this and that, is not up to 4 trillion. So imagine that we even decide today that we should allow people to pay the market price for petrol, but we cancel all of these taxes. So Nigerians don't have to pay personal income tax anymore, don't pay levies, don't pay market rates, just do your business. Just imagine for a moment the impact that we have on our people and the benefit that we'll see from that. So I do think that in a country where we are struggling with revenue, this is a wrong priority. This is the wrong application of our lean resources, and we have to do something about it very quickly.
Mr. Edele, multiple exchange rate is also something that the World Bank is talking about. And it's side by side. They also want a market-related rate, a rate that flows with the market. But how sustainable is this? Can we accommodate this? CBN is saying this can't happen. We can't just allow free flow of the naira. What's your position with regards to this?
Yeah, I do understand where the central bank is coming from. A free float is going to be difficult because it can spiral out of control. You may easily find naira hitting even 1,000 naira to the dollar. And anywhere exchange rate goes, it affects inflation because a lot of things are imported into Nigeria still. So I would understand that we can't, do a free float of our currency. I also don't think that the current model we have is the most optimal. What I think we should do is we have to accommodate all legitimate demands. Even if you want to buy dollars to go and import, slippers or toothpicks, right? We should accommodate all legitimate demands and then have an interaction or handshake with fiscal policy such that the import duties on toothpick and slippers can even be 200%. Because what happens today is they go to the black market to buy the dollars for those ineligible items. So they pay a high cost, but they distort the foreign exchange market. If you allow them to come to the market, but you impose a higher import duty on them, you still get the same result without distorting the foreign exchange market. What you then do is that the only demand that you push to the black market should be illegitimate demands. People who sell drugs and they are looking to buy dollars, people who are buying dollars to do elections and pay bribes, let them go and pay even 2,000 naira to buy $1. That's not our business. Put black market activities to the black market. allow every legitimate transaction that is not prohibited by law in Nigeria to access the foreign exchange market, and then use fiscal policy in terms of import duties to regulate the ones you want to encourage and the ones you want to discourage. If you do that, what would then happen is that you have an exchange rate that is market determined, but in a way it's not spiraling out of control. And that will help us attract foreign portfolio investment. It will help us attract foreign direct investment. And when you combine all of these with growth of industries that can now source input and machinery for what they do, you find that we have even excess liquidity to defend Naira. And then you suddenly see that Naira is more stable than the fear that we have now. And the fact that even though the price of crude oil in the international market is going up because of this subsidy waste and inefficiency, Nigeria is not gaining. We are losing instead of gaining. Saudi Aramco reported an increase of about 124% in their profit because of the rising price of crude oil in the international market. NNPC is not remitting anything to FAT because we are now spending more to pay subsidy than we are making from even selling crude oil that God has given to us. This is clearly not a sustainable position to be in, and we have to think critically and take tough decisions while protecting the vulnerable people, but we must move forward and not maintaining the status quo now because it's clearly not sustainable.
Finally, before I let you go, what's this talk also around global trade? A lot of issues around tariffs and, tariffs, price subsidies, and all of that. What's actually the problem? They're talking about improving global trade. What policies or what do you think government can do to strengthen our relationship globally?
Yes, we have, I think we do have a lot of opportunities. And I'll still keep it to the conversation around the fuel subsidy and petrol. So international trade, the world is under pressure because there was a lot of quantitative easing and printing of money all over the world to fight off COVID-19. And then we're now having to deal with the consequences of that there's inflation all over the world, from the UK to the US, everywhere there's inflation. And for a country like Nigeria, where we import a lot, you have the added impact of imported inflation into the country. Now, if you think about the opportunities we have, both in terms of the Ukraine-Russia crisis, where Europe is now looking elsewhere for energy, including gas, and the fact that we are well positioned to fill in some of those gaps and attract investment in the immediate term, plus the fact that under the African Continental Free Trade Area, we have the opportunity to replace the source of importation of refined products in many African countries. Why should they be importing from Asia and Europe? They can import from Nigeria. Why can't Nigeria produce 2 million barrels per day and refine every single one of them? Instead of exporting crude oil, we meet our local demand and we export refined products. That way, we can benefit from the interplay of international trade, regional agreements, global treaty, and all manner of things then play in our favor, rather than now that we are at the mercy of everyone. So it's really important that we address these issues very urgently. I know Nigerians would always say that if we start refining locally, then we won't have to worry about subsidy. That's not exactly correct. Even if you refine locally, the fact is that the price is still more than the pump price. You gain some efficiency in terms of the freight costs, inefficiency of clearance of those products at the border and all of that, but it will not significantly make the market price to be the same thing as the pump price we have today. All of these moving parts, we have to be strategic in making sure that they play together in our own favor as a country.
Fiscal policy partner, Africa tax leader, PricewaterhouseCoopers, Mr. Taiwo Oyedele, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate this. Do enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you for having me.